Daniel Andrews has a 60% approval rating. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of Realpolitik. I thought we'd have a look, don't forget your Stein, but I thought we'd have a look at the latest Roy Morgan poll data for Victoria, particularly with all of the protests that are flooding the streets. Tens of thousands of people going up and down the streets of Melbourne, many of them protesting against Premier Daniel Andrews. Now, here's the thing. Seeing that, you might think it's a wave of change. The masses are rising up. Andrews has no support. But, well, the polling tells us a different thing. And I know a lot of people don't trust the polling, but we're not America, everyone. You don't need to hide the fact that you're an Andrews supporter in Victoria. No one's going to care or be, ashamed or embarrassed. Well, maybe they will be. But it's not like America, guys. So let's have a look at this. So, Victoria's major parties both lose support to minor parties, while Premier Daniel Andrews' job approval is over 10 points lower than a year ago. So, the big two parties are dropping. That makes complete sense. Andrews, he's dropped too, down 10%. That's a big move. But it shows you how high he was a year ago, guys. Here's the thing. If everyone you talk to is just repeating the same political position you have or the same ideological position, you may be in a bubble, and that's the danger of social media. So that's why you think it's, Andrews is gone, there's no way he'll come back, everyone hates him. When 60% still approve of him. Everyone, he's got a 60% approval rating. I think we're going to see a lot of people voting for minor parties. And actually, One Nation they're coming up with this new cartoon, which is just hilarious. Go on Pauline Hanson's Twitter feed, even if you're not a fan. Have a look at this cartoon they've made. It reminds me of Lbry figures, where they're teaching people the value of preferences. And that is encouraging. I'd love to see, we're never going to see a minor party take over the House of Reps in one election. It'd be nice to see a few minor members get into the House of Reps. So perhaps one of the majors needs to get in bed with them and make a coalition to form government. That's what we want to see. You want to see them actually having to negotiate and work in Parliament. But anyway, let's get back to this. A Roy Morgan poll on state voting intentions in Victoria shows the ALP lead over the LNP on a two-party preferred basis is virtually unchanged from a year ago, although both major parties have lost primary support to minor parties and independents, according to Roy Morgan Snap SMS survey on Victorian voting intentions conducted yesterday. This was on the 11th of November, so this is up-to-date data. The ALP leads comfortably on a two-party preferred basis on 58%, down 0.5 from November 2020, compared to the LNP on 42%. So that's an insane difference, guys. That is huge. Labor has much more support than LNP. So here's the thing. If you have all these people protesting Dan Andrews, they put a minor party, and then they put Labor number 2 or even after the Greens. What's the point? What's the point? The result is similar to the result in the last Victorian state election in 2018, which was easily won by ALP at 57.3. With Liberal at 42.7. Primary support for both major parties is down and up for minor parties and independents. Primary support for ALP is now at 43%, down 2 points from a year ago in November 2020, and it's well ahead of the LNP, down 3.5 points to 31%, whilst supports for the Greens is unchanged at 11%. The big winners from a year ago are the minor parties and independents, with total support of 15%, up 5.5% from a year ago. Support is highest for Clive Palmer's United Australia Party on 3%. Okay, so if the UAP can get 3%, then they can get some election funding. This is one of the reasons as well to vote, at least in the federal election, for a minor party, is so they can recoup some of the costs they incurred. Darren Hinch's Justice Party at 2%. Now, Hinch has been a huge disappointment seeing him in Parliament. While 3.5% of people support other parties, support for independents is up at 6.5%, up from 2% a year ago. So still, you've got 15% of the population throwing their support for minors. So that's increased 2% for minors, but still, Labor's well ahead, guys. Greens is a vote for Labor too. You got to realise that, pretty much. Premier Daniel Andrews' job approval is still high, but down over 10 points in a year. The Roy Morgan survey found 60.5% of Victorian electors now approve of the way Premier Daniel Andrews is handling his job, down 10.5 points from a year ago in November 2020, while 39.5%, up 10.5%, disapprove of his handling of the job. There you go. Democracy, everyone. Mob rule. The majority think he's doing a good job. He may get back in. The ALP continues to hold massive two-party preferred lead amongst women. Despite the drift in support to minor parties, the ALP continues to hold a large two-party preferred lead amongst key demographics, and this is especially true for women who support the ALP, 65%. And now we know why Labor in Victoria have all these social justice policies there. Why they believe in the fantasy and mythical wage gap, which is really an earnings gap. But it doesn't matter. It wins them the election. Remember, this is politics. It doesn't have to be real. It doesn't have to be factual. It's all emotionally based. 65%, there you go. You won. Support among men also favours the LP, but by a narrow margin of 55.5%. LNP is 44.5%. The ALP's lead is strongest in country Victoria than in the heavily locked up city of Melbourne. In country Victoria, the ALP has 63%, has a large two-party preferred lead over the LNP on 37%. So here you go. So the country Victorians are approving of, locking down the city, it seems. ALP support in Melbourne is also strong, but the two-party preferred lead isn't as significant. ALP is 59.5%. That's still huge. 59, nearly 60% to 40%. That's still a huge lead. Melbourne became what some claim is the most lockdown city in the world before emerging from its sixth lockdown in mid-October. Young people. This is the concern. We've got the younger generation are really pivoting hard for government intervention and authority. Harder than you realise. So they give the highest marks for Premier Andrews' handling of his job. The approval of Premier Daniel Andrews' handling of his job is heavily correlated to age. A large majority of young Victorians under 35, 72%. 72% of people under 35, those least at risk of this illness. Well, there's your future. Approve of Premier Andrews' handling of the job compared to only 28% that disapprove. The strong approval decline progresses with age. Over 2/5 of those 35 to 49, so my group, there. So 62% of us millennials support him, and 61%. See, this is true. The older generations are smarter. Only 61, oh, pretty close. Approve of it drops to 55% of those 65 over. The approval rating of Premier Andrews amongst the genders match the figures of the two-party preferred, with 65% of women approving his handling of the job compared to 55.5% of men. And now, analysing the result by voting intention shows just how widely divergent the views of supporters of the different parties are. And a unanimous 97% of ALP voters approve of Premier Daniel Andrews' handling of the job, and a large majority, 84% of the Green supporters approve. In contrast, only 16% of LNP supporters, and it drops to 1.5% of Clive Palmer's United Australia Party. Why isn't One Nation that prominent in Victoria, guys? What's going on there? I guess they don't have a senator. And there we have the quotes, guys. So, 60.5% approval rating for Andrews. Let's have a talk about this one. I'm not surprised. We've been talking about this socialist shift in the youth for some time. And I've got we're looking at articles 2 years ago on the channel where there's a big shift there. This is going to be a generational change. I think you're going to have housing affordability manifesting as that people are not going to own their own property. People, how many people are starting businesses now? What incentives are there? All the hurdles that you have to jump. That's going to lead to more people expecting the government to take care of them. We need to really, we need a cultural shift here in Australia, a shift to more liberty-focused. But it's not going to happen quick. Australia is a utilitarian socialist country, guys. You've got to look at it with that perspective. Then you can see all these decisions people make, all this support for government intervention that people advocate for. It all makes much more sense. We don't have the heroes like the Americans do that fought a tyranny to give them liberty. This is going to take an intergenerational change to shift away from this. Maybe we have some difficult times of increasing government intervention coming into our lives. We've already got a fair bloody significant amount of it. I'm hoping from all of this there will be more of a shift to the minor parties and we'll start to see some minor members in the House of Reps make a difference. That's what I hope the silver lining is of all of this. But my one concern is there's such a divergence in the movement against government intervention here in Australia. I can't see it as a cohesive alternative. What do you reckon? Do you think UAP will make a difference? Do you think One Nation will? Or will they just all split the votes from the conservative parties? You just have to hope that people preference smartly so we don't get stuck with Labor at a national level. What do you reckon, everyone? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Check out this recent video I did about ammonia-based shipping on my other main channel. Not many people have watched it, but I think it's something that will actually make an impact on an environmental scale. Take care, guys, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye for now.